So at first I wasn't going to actually make a video this week. I've been sick for a bit, so I was just planning on not uploading, but then we got a random announcement out of nowhere, literally 3 days before now, that Land of the Lustrous would be releasing chapter 100, so I decided, okay, when this chapter drops, I will read it and I'll decide if I should make a video on it, and the chapter has dropped, and oh, here I am right now. Now this isn't really going to be like a chapter review, it's more going to be just me rambling on and talking about the chapter itself, the chapters before it, what I think it all means, how I think the ending's gonna go, and just my opinions overall about stuff like outside of the manga too, like its scheduling and all that stuff. So in the previous chapter, we get to see Foss after praying everybody away, kind of just existing without any real purpose for who knows how long. The concept of time doesn't really seem to matter anymore. We're just kinda existing now as the universe takes its course. Foss is all alone, but then meets and befriends this rock that it can talk to because of Foss's powers. And this rock pretty much tells Foss everything that they really needed to hear a long time ago, but couldn't because of just the nature and behavior of the gems towards Foss and vice versa. So I end that chapter off with the rock talking about this song and expressing its happiness of just meeting Foss, which Foss is even more pleased to have done because for once Foss has met someone that doesn't see them as a burden or put them on a pedestal for reasons aside from themselves or anything like that. They just appreciate Foss for existing and for being kind, something that Foss lost sight of a long time ago. Some say it was too easy for Foss to be convinced, but I don't really agree on that. The Rock's words in this chapter are all things that the gems would have never said to Foss, because none of them really seemed to care about any of that. They never really cared for Foss for who they really were, and the ones who did care were taken away from them in the blink of an eye, so there was very little left to bring Foss back, and when they did finally try to do so, it was far too late. It only became a matter of damage control at that point, and there was no turning back. Only in times of reflection now could Foss actually begin to reflect and think about all they had done and all that had went down, once again adding to the whole tragedy of the story. So that was the previous chapter, but in this chapter we have different stuff, obviously. It's a very mellow type of chapter. It's very calm, very subtle, and there isn't a lot of stuff going on. The Rock is singing to Foss what I believe is the song it mentioned about the white dwarfs in the previous chapter. Foss is just sitting with the Rock, listening to it singing, and appreciating it all. For once it feels like there's a tiny bit of peace in the story as Foss just lays there and exists with the Rock no matter what else is happening. No worries, no nothing. But something clearly still feels off, which I will get to later. They meet this other rock that doesn't talk but wiggles around, which amuses them, but it runs off before they can say or do anything, so they go to apologize to it. Traveling over what seems to be water, showing us that a lot of time has definitely passed since a lot of land has kind of been swallowed by the sea now. They go and apologize to the Rock, and it's written out something for them, and it turns out to seemingly be another song. The Rock sings this song, and Foss kinda just drops to the ground. For what reasons? A lot of people aren't really sure, but once again, I will get to that again. Now, I will be honest with you guys, I didn't really understand this chapter at first, and since it's still the day of release, not everything is settled in yet, and my opinion right now might change severely later on. But I think I have an idea of what this chapter means, and what it means for the rest of the story going forward. The final few panels with the Rock singing the song about the stars and the fragments and all that, it resembles the Lustrous. It resembles the gems, at least that's what I think. And it reminds Foss of everything that has happened after so much time had passed, and brings them back to the reality of their own responsibility. In this chapter, Foss was just attempting to let themselves slip away into time, but they can't do that. They can't be like the rocks. They have to come to terms with everything, which they still haven't done. Foss is still very much carried by regret, and is still learning to be wiser after all this time. Foss still needs to let go of everything, and there seems to only be one way to get around that. Chapter 99 gave us the conversation of the White Dwarf with Foss and the Rock. Foss acknowledges its beauty, as the Rock explains how it gives out the last of its light right before fading out. And just the chapter before this, Foss prayed everyone away, giving off one big light before everyone disappeared into nothingness. And all of them were at peace with what's happened. All of them had no more regrets. They were all just ready to let everything go. Everyone except for Foss, the one praying them away. There's been a lot of talk that Foss will quote-unquote die at the end of the story, which I use very loosely due to how weird death actually is in this series. The concept of immortality has always been treated as a sort of purgatory in the story, and so I do believe that Foss will likely meet their end at the story's conclusion, by praying themselves away and coming to terms with everything, letting it all go, emitting one last bright light before fading away into nothingness, much like their former friends, and much like the White Dwarf. At least, that's what I think will be the case. I could be wrong, for all I know. A lot of things in this story have went over my head in the past, and I would not be surprised if this was another case of that. But if this is what is going to happen, then I think Land of the Lustrous is going to be perfectly fine with its ending, and it will give off a very bittersweet but satisfying conclusion that can give Foss a peaceful ending. Something that they have deserved for a very long time. Now, I know not everybody has been in love with these chapters as of late, and I can see why, because there's not a lot going on in them, they're very short, and there's a very long waiting period between each chapter. And that's just a matter of circumstance. Obviously, we know what's going on with like Ichikawa and her health and all that stuff. And so it's just kinda hard to take in everything. These chapters also feel like something that works more on a consistent read through rather than waiting, months in advance for each chapter, which kind of kills a bit of the hype and leaves people a bit blank-minded on what happened previously as we get to the next chapter. But once everything comes together and once everything's wrapped up, when you come back to it, I think these chapters will be some of the ones that stick the most with people, just because of how much meaning there really is to them. Obviously, I want more chapters to release at a more consistent pace, but even despite that, I have loved all of the chapters that have been releasing so far, including this one. I know it's going to need to settle in for a lot more people, but for me, I really loved it, and I think the ending is going to be great, if my analysis of it is true, or at least somewhat true. Either way, I can't wait for what happens next, and I don't know if I'm ready to say goodbye to this series just yet. Obviously, it's still gonna be quite a while because, the breaks and everything, but we don't really have that many chapters left. I think we only have like one more volume to fill out and then everything's done. And if that's the case, well then, it might be time to say goodbye to this character and this story soon, and I don't know how to feel about that, but I will say that it has been a very, very, very eventful and meaningful journey to have read this series, and it's done a lot for me in just the short time that I've been reading it that a lot of other series have not done, which is all I can really ask for. It's more than I can ask for. But with all that being said, that's really all I have to talk about in this video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.